Understanding your customer's pain. Really, what it comes down to is how to ask the right questions. So, what is discovery and why is it so important when dealing with our customers? Well, every company is a software company that you'll be talking to. This is very important to understand. Also, every company is different and has their own approaches to development. This is very much a standard. Every company adopts their own set of standards, and everyone is different. And companies are always evolving and changing. So understanding that is also an important feature of this. A lot of companies come to us at JFrog and discuss with us either what they currently have or and where they would like to go. So understanding that really gives you a perspective of timeframes and things like that. Also, too, teams have become more distributed than ever. There's a massive global presence that a lot of these companies have. So also understanding how many locations and things like that. And we'll go through a series of questions that you might want to ask. Also, too, the number of tools that companies are using these days are vast, and everybody has their own opinion on what's important to them and what fits their need, and also depending on the types of industry. If you're in something like a medical or avionics, you might have different regulations. If you're doing something more along social or fintech, whatever it is, companies adopt the technologies that best fit the situations that they've put themselves into, which is which vertical they might be in or what kind of segment they're in, and it depends. On top of that, different industries have different demands, like I said, regulations and things like that. And these are everything you need to be aware of, because what you offer for, say, a social media company is vastly different from a medical tech company, right? These are very different things, and understanding that really helps you understand where they are going in terms of what they need to achieve the goals they have. And all software is different and serves different purposes. So saying that, whether it's a web service where you might be deploying something like Kubernetes with Docker images and things like Terraform templates, it could be something as a mobile application where they're using Swift or they're using CocoaPods or maybe even Gradle for Android, going down to firmware devices with C and C++. Understanding too what kind of technology stack their implementations are going to have can also help you understand what kind of things you can offer with the JFrog platform to them and the benefits behind that. So, but understanding what a company uses really can make the difference, because if you listen, the biggest thing is I always like to say whenever I'm working with companies is that the biggest and most important step besides showing the product and explaining what it can do is actually listening to the company. So making sure you ask the right questions. Questions like, what are their pains and what are their objectives for software development? Are they looking to increase velocity? Are they looking to increase security? Are they looking for a better way to do their software development lifecycle in general? These are the kind of things you need to know. Understand why they came to you and why this is important. Also, make sure you understand the industry or the vertical extremely well. Like I said, if there's some sort of regulation behind it, understand the regulations. If they're doing some sort of mobile development, ask the questions. Hey, you have a mobile application. Is there a backend that powers this? Also, understand what their current software development lifecycle is, right? Understanding the SDLC will also help you expose by asking more questions. You'd be surprised how much information you can garner from that to come up with the appropriate solution for them. Because in some cases, you might have an idea that it's a larger deployment than it actually is, or they might have gates that they have, or they're looking for best practices. There's things like that. So understanding how they currently invoke their current software development lifecycle is extremely important. On top of that, remember I mentioned global dispersity, right? There's a lot of distributed teams in the world. It might be in EMEA, it might be the US, it might be South America, wherever they are. Understand, how big their organization is. Understand how many locations there are. Is there software development being done in all these locations? Do these locations have various tasks where maybe they developed in the United States and maybe they use Eastern Europe as a way for them to do QA testing? And they might do performance and monitoring in some place like India or somewhere in China. Who knows, right? You need to understand how their company interoperates between locations and the various forms and functions that those locations served or combined functions. On top of that, do they distribute their software to either external customers or to things like IoT devices? If they do things where they say they create software that their customers consume, make sure you ask the right questions, get all the details on what that means. Do they need authentication to download your software? Is there a PO process, maybe where a PO is created and then it enacts some sort of action that creates a software bundle for them? Or if it's IoT devices, find out what kind. Are they Windows-based devices? Are they Linux-based devices? How many devices? What are is there regulations around that? How are they currently using these devices or monitoring, maintaining, and updating them? On top of that, find out what kind of tool sets they're using. Now, like I said, the number of tool sets that companies have can be extremely small and refined. Especially we see this now with a lot of platform engineering and the idea of doing more self-service. Or is it more akin to where they have different tools for different segments? Maybe their security team is not integrated into their software development team. Do they have their own set of tools? Does the QA department provide data that can be actually compounded back and put into Artifactory so you can increase the knowledge base on the system of record inside of Artifactory, because this is the place where you store your builds? Also, how are they currently handling security, right? As I mentioned, sometimes security teams are separated. Are they air gapped, which is a big thing we see in a lot of industry where companies have gone in and they get hit with a potential threat, or they might find some sort of vulnerability, and instead of addressing it by coming up with a better methodology, in some cases they just cut it off and they implement these older school processes where they have to request the libraries they need. Or, is it one of those ones where, they build software and it gets scanned by somebody else and the results come back? This actually might decrease the velocity, the speed in which they release their software. So make sure you understand also, too, all the security needs. Do they have anything for shift left? Do their developers use IDEs, and you have any tool sets that might be in there for things like SAST or, where if you have static code analysis to find out, is the code correct? Find out also, too, are they doing things with the source code? Are they storing it somewhere like GitHub or Bitbucket? And one of the things that we offer as the solution is Frogbot, which is a way for X-Ray to interact with that to make sure that when they do pull requests, you can get all the level of detail on security, whether it's contextual analysis with our advanced security down to standard vulnerability analysis. But understanding how they currently are doing software or what they want to achieve in terms of security around their software development. Also, too, are they currently using another package manager? There are other package managers out there. There are GitHub Actions has like GitHub Artifacts or Sonatype Nexus or, GitLab or one of those, and understand how they're using it currently, because we at JFrog actually offer migration tools that will allow them to easily migrate over from their current solution to the JFrog platform. And also, too, ask about what their thoughts or mentality or mandates are internally around things like, are you only self-hosted? Do you have your own data center? Or are you self-hosting your own stuff and you have it in your own VPC in one of the various public cloud providers? Are they averted to using things like SAST or a managed solution? Because the JFrog platform can be either self-hosted, it can be managed, it can also be hybrid. So understanding how they maintain and monitor their environments, how they use their environments, do they have restrictions? Do they have an account where maybe they're using AWS and they have something like Private Link? Understanding all the ways in which they enable their own current software development can really affect the offerings that you present to them. There are certain things that we have in the JFrog platform, like our JFrog Connect. Currently, right now, it's only a managed offering, but in the future, we're going to have it as a self-hosted offering. There's things like that. So these are kind of questions you need to, get into the mindset. And the more questions you ask, the more you'll expose. And actually, in a way, it'll be easier for you to go in and talk to the customer. And then lastly, what is the time period for these objectives? Because maybe you'll go through this whole thing and they say, you know what, we're actually, next year is we're really going to enact this. But we wanted to start early because we're starting the planning. Well, at that point, you actually can offer and say, hey, you know what, we come from a large breadth of experience around this. Maybe we can help you. Maybe you can expedite it. Or maybe you can give them some advice on some things to keep in mind. Always keep fresh. And then, maintain a relationship with them to keep following up until they get to the point where you think they're going to launch their objective, or when they've told you they're going to start working on their objective. And also make sure you understand the customer journey. Like, what is their current process and where are they going? Are they refactoring, meaning they're rewriting, the stuff that they have to make it more efficient, reduce the tool sets, improve security or something like that? Are they looking to purchase, right? This is where we come into the managed offerings that we offer at JFrog, right? We offer the various cloud providers. We've talked about this in other portions of this, but the idea is maybe they're looking to say, hey, you know what? We're shutting down, we're saving money. We want to get rid of any of our data centers. We want to move out of our VPCs, out of the cloud, and we just want you to maintain it for us. Are they replatforming, meaning that they're just going to say, hey, you know what? We're in the middle of a digital transformation. We hear that terminology a lot, but the idea is maybe they're doing a lift and shift, or in this case, like a lift and reshape, meaning that they're going to go ahead and they're going to say, we're moving from our data center up to a cloud provider because we want to reduce the cost of actually having a physical location. And in that same time frame, we're going to go ahead and do some, moving around of the tools that we use. Or maybe they're just saying, we're shutting down our data center and we're moving into a cloud provider. This is when we get into the whole idea of rehost. But understanding also that journey will help you understand what kind of influence you can have or how you can address their needs. So like one of the things is, say they are rehosting, they're doing a lift and shift. Well, if they could always have Artifactory to do their software development inside of their own data center, and they could have a secondary instance put up in, say, something like AWS or Azure, and they can use replication and do slow migration, right? There's ways we have other pieces to talk about this, but and other webinars, but the idea is simple. Understand what their mentality is, and this will help you achieve the win that you're probably most desirably looking for. Because remember, it's a giant universe of technologies out there, and the JFrog platform fits squarely in there. I always say that we're actually a platform for consistency, meaning that providing that consistency as a base foundation for the software development lifecycle, adding in security, distribution, all the pieces that come with the JFrog platform, and all the various technologies allows us to be very malleable inside of these organizations. So we can become that universal approach. We can become the base foundation, the conveyor belt for their software development needs, and the integration really depends on them. Like I said, a lot of companies, every company is different. I have been with JFrog for a long time, and I have never seen two companies have even remotely the same amount of components and things that they use, or lifecycle, or gates, or whatever you want to call it. Understand every nuanced detail of the security process. If you're unsure of a question, ask it, right? Like, how are you currently, using your security tools? Do you have a shift left mentality where security is a focus, or do you do it before it goes into production? Understanding and having it more conversational will help you in the long term. So understanding these needs, there's certain key phrases and terms that we have that will kind of could indicate whether or not there's a particular tier that they're looking to actually would fit them best, actually, is more like it. So understanding, is it Pro, which is our low-level, entry-level feature, Pro X with, which is Artifactory and X-Ray, Enterprise X is where we start getting to high availability with X-Ray, and then, of course, Enterprise Plus, which includes the big portions of our platform, which we've talked about before, right? Distribution and things like that. So if they're Pro, remember, Pro is actually, it used to be self-hosted, and now it's going away. It's going to be a SaaS only. It could be like, we're a small company. We're looking for a binary manager because we're growing as a company. We need a way to manage our builds and third-party transitive dependencies that we use. Or we're just starting to explore the DevOps journey, right? These are like basic questions. These are usually companies that are just starting, or they've been around for a bit, like a startup or a smaller company, and they're looking for a way to manage the software development needs that they have. Now we start getting into security. If they mention the word security, you're immediately going to move them up into at least an X model, right? So at least Pro X or Enterprise X, depending on it. But the thing is, it's the same idea. We're a small company, but we're also looking to make our products safer. Or we're in this industry and we have regulations and compliances. Maybe they're dealing with the US government, so they're going to need X-ray because they might need software bill of materials that when they ship their software, they're going to have to go in and actually present them with a software bill of materials, which is something we have, CycloneDX and SPDX. They're worried about the safety of their software, or we're reading about DevSecOps and we're really ready to dive into it because we actually got called out because of a vulnerability that we might have had. We're doing software code analysis. Do you guys do this, right? This is where we start getting into our SaaS platform, which is our advanced security. Yes, we do. We can help you make sure that your software is safer, not just at the binary level, but also too at the code level. And what's your, or maybe what's your support model? Because Pro X and stuff has support, right? This is the next question. Pro does not have support. Pro X and above has support available. And we have this on our site, and there's different levels of support and things like that too. What if they're an enterprise, right? So enterprise could be either new or an upgrade. They might be a Pro X customer and they say, you know what? Hey, we've been using you guys for a while. We've grown as a team, and now we want to have something a little bit more robust, or we know we've expanded to another location. It comes with 3 enterprise instances, Artifactory servers. We want to have it set up so that we can replicate in those countries. So this way we can make our development that much faster. Once again, bringing a level of safety, security, and consistency. Also, too, we're looking for a centralized method to store all of our software, or, we're looking for a highly available solution. And then once again, going back to the support model, right? We want to make sure that we have support. If we purchase your software, yes, we have various levels of support. But enterprise grade really means that they're serious about what they're doing and they're ready to take their software development to the next step. And then lastly, we're looking at systems that are like, we want a complete end-to-end software development system. We create web services where we have multiple cloud providers that we deploy to. We're an IoT company. We want to distribute our software, automotive, or things like that. This is really when you start getting into things like we want to have a centralized location for our access controls. We want to have multiple instances of Artifactory because we have 10 different locations around the globe and things like that. Or we're modernizing our architecture. We want to make sure we have more of a redundant global presence. We want to have DR. We want to have, we want to have an East Coast and West Coast representation, things like that. And then at the end of it, what kind of professional services do you offer? So we also have professional services too that we offer as part of this, or we can help also too in terms of having the highest tier of our support models that work with this. So the thing is understanding your customer that you're talking to, their needs, their desires, their initiatives, their software development processes, the tool sets they use, the security they're looking to enact or they're already enacting. These are the things that where the platform and asking the right questions can help determine if you're overselling or underselling the customer. By understanding their needs, you can have the best and most fruitful response with the customer themselves, and also too by reiterating what they have. By you listening means that you understand and you understand their needs. They're more adapt to come talk to you about what they want. Thank you very much.